Right. Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone are doing great. It's time for us to go ahead with the session for today. So yesterday was off due to occasion of Agayati. Uh, Day before yesterday, we have completed the classes for networking, I feel, right? So the networking topics have been discussed about the NAT gateway, transit gateway, and VPC peering and networking basics. So everything has been done. So today we are going to have our sessions for database. Okay. Any doubts on the previous sessions, like people have attended? Any doubts? So the more in-depth lab sessions and the configurations that can be done by everyone, like the people who are actually opted for the course structure within the ExcelR, they will be getting more understanding on the lab sessions while you're trying to practice more. You will be able to do the such labs as well, okay, based on the learnings we are trying to understand and the theoretical understanding right now. Okay. So I think some of you people might have registered with a free tier, correct? Free tier account. So please make sure to have it utilized with proper knowledge and try to review the free tier limitations, like under what aspects are the free tier account is available for, like what are the charges for the free tier services and the paid services. So we just need to understand. Based on that, you need to use those services, like the one which I'm trying to practice in lab. Okay. And don't try to click on any other options or any other services which you're not aware of until you'll get a good experience on working with AWS console. Any other doubts? We have tested lab sessions for the networking last. So that was good learnings and we got a good outputs as well during the lab sessions. I hope you people are clear with the topics which have covered till now, like compute storages and networking till now. So let's start with the database now. So you people might have heard the term called database, right? What is a database? Database is something which is trying to store, correct? So that we can, anything like in current scenario, in the entire world, the data is an important aspect in not only in individual like user faced, but also in terms of companies, organizations, and individual privacy level. The data plays an important aspect and it plays an important role, right? Because it has to be secured and it has to be stored. So and the cloud vendors and the IT infrastructure and the on-premise environment, they always try to take utmost precautions to store the data in a secure manner with by storing them in an organized way. Okay, so that it can be easily accessed and it can be modified and can be retrieved as well. So that kind of a thing. So coming in, growing by the technology specific, we have trying to see, well, there are different security levels like encryption methods, algorithms, and different types of databases that will actually help us to store the data. Okay. So before that, let us try to understand what is a database. We'll try to do a one sample, availability services like database available services in Amazon Cloud as well, like how it is going to be accessible for the users. And trying to discuss the main aspects what are there. Okay. So what is a database? A database is an organized collection of data so that it can be easily accessed and managed. Correct. So it just makes the most general sense because we can try to tell it as it's an organized collection of a data. More specifically, a database is an electronic system that allows data to be easily accessed, manipulated. Manipulated means you can try to easily access and you can try to modify and you can try to update as well. Okay. So it's generally stored and accessed electronically from a computer system. From your system, you can try to access that, and it supports the storage and manipulation of data. So in other words, we can try to say databases are used by an organizations as a method of storing, managing, and retrieving the information, right? So how this can be organized? So you can see, you can organize data into tables, rows, columns, and index to make it easier to find relevant information. So it is not only important to store the data directly to the database, but also to retrieve, to fetch, and to update the data is also an important aspect, because you are trying to store millions of data, like somewhere in the cloud or in on-premise infrastructure on the server with some kind of a tools. But it's also makes an efficient way to how to fetch the information when you are required. Whenever you are required to fetch the data, whenever you want to retrieve the information from the database, how efficient you will be able to try to find out. That's also an important thing, correct? So that's why we need a different types of software techniques and the methods and the database levels, like types. So whenever you're trying to search, it is, for example, you're trying to store the data in a Word document, like without doing any structuring, you're trying to store in a computer. If you want to search and trying to fetch that this particular person, I just need the data, then you just need to go and manually search, right? So it will be kind of a hard decision, and it will be trying to make it a complex way of searching in a Word document, like to having around 50 and 100 pages of data. So if you want to find a particular person data, including his name, roll numbers, and everything. So for example, you are trying to make it an Excel sheet and trying to make it in the rows and the columns and trying to have it a formulas defined. Then you are trying to have it the first search with the based on the person name and the column, including the columns and the row details where the data actually has been mentioned sequential manner. So in the same way, the data which has been actually trying to show in the database as well, it will be trying to utilize some kind of a tools like SQL and other tools where you can try to organize the data into tables, rows, and columns. Okay, it will be in the tables, rows, and columns to make it easier to find the relevant information. For example, inside the database, the information looks like in this way. It will be in the table format. You can see it has a rows, it has a columns, and it will try to have an indexing to find the fetch the data, so that you will be writing a query. So queries means we are trying to use a tool called SQL. SQL is nothing but a structured query language where you are trying to write a query where you can try to find the information and fetch the information from the database. Okay, this is how it looks like. So that inside the database, there will be a database admins who will try to having a good knowledge on the SQL, and they'll try to create a database for us. And once we try to have the structured data, like non-structured data, we'll try to structured and non-structured data, everything will be consolidated and trying to upload that data inside the database. Okay, so that is what it is trying to mention. So we can try to see more examples where a database types as well. What are the different types? Now that you are reviewed key considerations, consider the two categories of databases. What are the different types of databases? We have relational databases and non-relational databases. Okay, relational and non-relational. What are the examples? Microsoft SQL Server, Oracle Database, MySQL. So in the relational database, we are trying to use these kind of a softwares to store the structured data. Okay. So in the relational database, we are trying to use the structured data where the information will be trying to be in the format of structured data format. So, okay. So you need to execute SQL query to fetch that records and you try to grab that. Okay. And there are many dynamic websites on the www like internet nowadays, which are actually handled through the databases. For example, a model that checks the availability of a rooms in a hotel. It's an example of a dynamic website that uses a database. So when you might have remember, there is a famous temple called Tirupati. Okay, when you are trying to book a room, okay, you are trying to go to that website and trying to search for that particular date and trying to book a room, right? And so when you're trying to input that this particular time at this particular date, I need room for available for 2 nights. Okay. So what happens in the background? That request is going through API. So in the backend, it writes in SQL query. What is that? Select query, find rooms, star, and from this particular date and at this particular location. So with the help of an API, it will try to send out a query to that particular database. So database is trying to fetch the information and trying to give the information back. So that is nothing but it is trying to give us an information from the database level. Correct? So in that way, these kind of things like relational databases and raw non-relational databases, it will be used in the application level. Integration will be done with an application level. Okay. So as I said, so databases will be in a different tools like MySQL, SQL Server, Oracle, MS Access. These are different tools which are actually useful to fetch the data which has been integrated with the database, course CRSQ. So there is a course for SQL as well. Like if people are actually, interested in trying to pursue the database career, they can try to have a courses and they can try to be a database administrators as well. There are jobs for that. Okay. And these are kind of a databases where the data will be stored, right? So to have that interaction, for example, the websites which will be deployed, right, in the front end, the front end pages that will be deployed and the different technologies like ASP, .NET, MNC, HTML, the websites, the front end applications will be interacted through these websites, and in the back end, the data will be stored inside the database with some specific tools. Okay, and how these can be integrated with the database with the help of a programming languages, where we are trying to write a code to sync this particular database with the back end applications. Correct. So, what are the programming languages? Kind of a C language, Java, Python, and any other developing coding applications. Okay, Elastic Beans like Lambda, which are available as well. So what happens when we are trying to enter any information to the website? So the website is trying to call out an API. That API is connected to the database, and the database is trying to give us information in the front end. So that's how it's quick and efficient. It is trying to give us an information. Okay. So this is how it looks like, and we can see there are relational and non-relational databases. Like these are the examples, and traditional examples for non-relationals: MongoDB, Cassandra, and Redis. Okay, so these are kind of a non-relational examples. For example, I'll try to show you an example here. See, there is a data. Okay, you can see this table. This is how the table looks like in the database level. If you want to try to clearly understand, I have data which has been available in the database. For example, it has been loaded with an employee ID, employee name, department name, E1, E2, E3, E4. So these are the IDs for the particular employees data. So these are the employee names: Ram, Shyam, Shekhar, and Manoj. And these are the kind of a relevant department name. So Ram is belonging from IT department. He is from E1. Shekhar is from E3, having an employee ID, and he is from accounts team, right? And E4 is a Manoj. It is kind of an IT. Correct? He is from a those department. So what happens if I want to search that particular information? For example, I'm going to a website, and I'm going to a website. I'm going to that particular university. I'm trying to enter. It is trying to give me a pop-up. What is the pop-up? It is trying to give me a pop-up saying that find the employee information. Then what I'm trying to do, I put an information like in the employee, you can the search bar. I click on E1 and click on the search in the website. Okay. So that website is trying to, this is running through web technologies kind of HTML, ASP.NET tools, correct, in the backend. So this is integrated with some kind of an API. What is an API? API is nothing but it actually mediates the communication with the front end and the back end applications. Okay. It integrates a connection between the front end, means the websites, and the back end is a connection to the database and other tools. So that is nothing but an application program interface. So application program interface, it communicates between the front end and the back end applications, right? So with the help of API, it will try to connect that. So when I click on search, as within that tool, I already had a code deployed. This is connected to some kind of a database. So I'm trying to connect that. So what happens when I click on E1 and search in the website, then it is trying to generate a query in the backend. This is how the SQL query looks like. So database can understand the query languages. So I'm trying to use the SQL language. Then I'm trying to enter, select employee ID, comma, employee name, employee ID, comma, employee name, department name. So I'm trying to put the header values from employees table. This is the employee table where employee ID equal to E1. So I'm trying to click on E1, then the background is trying to do a search, then I'll get information only for this particular row. Okay. So this is how the searching is happening in the background. Got it? So that's what it means. So relational database, it means I'm trying to have a relation between E1 and this department IT. Okay. So I'm trying to have a relation between employee ID, E1 and the IT. And if there are any other tables that is related to this particular information RAM, then relational database means it is having a relation between one table to another table. So that's how the information can be fetched. Okay. So that's how you're trying to have that information. You can see IT equal to ITS, because if I'm trying to change the employee information, like the department information, IT equal to ITS, because I'm trying to change the department name for this particular employee one, ITS, then employee E1 is also related to IT and IT is related to another department, that is ITS. So it is kind of a relation is happening between two tables. So that's why it is trying to call as relational database. Correct? You can see E1 equal to ITS, E4 equal to ITS. Because I've changed that and I had a relation with IT equal to ITS department as well. So relation between one table to another table, that is actually trying to play a key role. So we are trying to grab the information in such a way. So that's how it is going to help. You can see the same happening with D1 to D2. So here you can see I'm having an employee one RAM D1. Okay. But D1 department ID, it is again linked to the IT department. So there is a linkage between the first table and the second table. The relation between two tables is happening within the SQL, so that I'm getting the information in the front end. So that is why we are calling that as a relational database. Okay. So it is kind of information fetching again. I'm trying to put E1 equal to search. Then it is trying to go with the linkage with E1 to D1, and then D1 having a different table. You can see D1 is actually belonging from another table that the department ID ITS. So I'm getting information as E1, employee name RAM, and the department name ITS. So you can see this relation is happening with the help of a query as well. I'm trying to fetch that. So the backend search is happening with a relation. So that's how we are trying to call that as a relational database. Okay. And in the same way, if you try to see the non-relational means, there is nothing but a server level. Serverless we are trying to call as a non-relational. There should be non-relational. Non-relational is nothing but a NoSQL. That means, as I told, there is a relation between one table to another table. That is kind of a relational database. Correct? Non-relational means there are no relation between other tables. There is no dependency for the other tables inside SQL, and there are no schema restrictions. So when you're trying to do a SQL query search in relational database, it should have a relation. Otherwise, and also it should have a proper searching format. And otherwise, it will try to give you an error. But in the NoSQL, there are no schema restrictions. It is very fast while retrieving the data. That is nothing but a non-relational database. Okay. So here we can see the non-relational examples. We can see the traditional examples: MongoDB, Cassandra, and the Redis. Right. And if you try to consider about the database considerations, so what actually is needed to deploy database infrastructure? That's what it is trying to mention. Scalability. So if there are any actually databases in place, it has been deployed. If that is actually required to upscale to upper limit, and if you want to have that increase, like more servers are needed, and more storage is needed, and more specifications, hardware specifications, and everything that has to be included, that has to go through the scalability. Okay, so that is actually possible with the cloud environment. If there are any issues for the kind of a backup and disaster recovery and the maintenance, and everything will be going on and taken care by AWS itself. So scalability should be an option which is available within the cloud. Okay, and we also need to make sure the storage requirements. How much storage is requirement when we are trying to deploy infrastructure? So for example, I have 100 app servers, 100 web servers. Based on that, I need to guess and storage, gauge the capacity, like how much storage has to be that can be able to support the database. Based on that, I need to those many servers. Based on that, I need to launch that much of storage I have to deploy. Correct? So that we need to make sure. Object size and types. What kind of an object? Object is nothing but a data, and what kind of a data types which are actually uploaded into the database. That also to be considered under the database requirements. And durability. What is the durability of the data? How much time the data has to be stored? How much backup time it has to be maintained? So frequently, how much backup and the thing it has to be stored, and like kind of an archival format, and it has to be in transit data, everything that will be coming into the durability. And make sure when there is a backup, we need to retrieve the data as well, right? That durability has to be taken care. These are kind of a database considerations. Okay. So there are different types of benefits where relational database types you can see. Benefits for the relational database, it is easy to use. Reduce the data storage. The data storage is actually reduced size when we compare to it, because it does uses different algorithms and protocols to have that RDBMS setup based on different set of tools. So the common language we try to use, as I told you, SQL query, right? Select command, insert command, update command, modify command. So the common language it is using is structured query language. That is nothing but an SQL. Okay. So you can see this picture as well. It is nothing but a relational database management system. You can see how it is trying to store the information. It is trying to store the information based on the customer details, customer ID, the first name, last name, age, and all the personal details along with an order details, the product details, product ID, amount, in the invoice details, invoice ID. So this information is completely stored in a different kind of a tables. You can see this customer data is stored in a different table. Order details are stored in the different tables. Product details are stored in different tables. Invoice is stored in a different table. So these are all interconnected. It means there is a relation happening between these. So when you are trying to fetch the information, you need to write a query to pull the information based on the information which has been available within the database. Okay. So how this is actually having that response, you can see user is trying to have the data uploaded. Correct. So what access I do have? I have an access to only application. For example, I'm trying to open an Amazon application. I'm trying to go to the application. I'm trying to buy some information. Products. And then I try to load it to the card and try to pay the amount. So I'll get an invoice. I'll get the product image. The product delivered to my account. The address and the details of the order ID and the status and everything. Correct. So all the details will be available, and along with an order ID and my personal details like email, first name, last name, email ID, and the address, everything. So this application, what it's trying to do, this application is trying to have a conversion and trying to store the data with the help of SQL query connected to the database. Okay. So whenever I'm trying to grab the data next time, I want to download some invoice. I want to modify my data. I want to modify some address. So it is again going to the SQL. It is trying to give us a response back, same to the application front end, so that user can try to download and try to modify the data. Okay. So the database access will have it to the database administrators, how it will be set up, and user will have an access to only to the application level. So this is how the information will be fetched. Okay. In the real time, this is how the information will be stored. What are the rules which has been defined for the relational database here? Need strict schema rules. Okay. So for example, if you are trying to download and trying to fetch the data within the SQL, the schema has to be properly defined. For example, if you are trying to mention the numerical values in a one row, then that has to be sequentially happen. So one numerical value is entered and you are trying to upload the string values and any other integer values, it won't accept. Okay. So if the one row is maintained with a strict numerical values, it should actually have a numerical values defined. Like ID, in the ID place, it should have an IDs like integer values. In the name place, it should have only string values. It shouldn't have a numerical values. That kind of a restrictions, right? So it needs a definite strict schema rules. Otherwise, it will give you an errors. Do not need extreme read and write capacity. So it doesn't have that much frequent read and write capacity because the data will be in a structured format. So this kind of a solution is going to benefit when you're trying to have an infrequent data access and where the structured data has to be stored properly within this database. Okay. Do not need extreme performance, and an RDMS can be the best lowest effort solution. So it is the best solution for the feasible solutions with the cost level considerations because it doesn't have that much fast level frequent readouts and the infrequent data pulls. Okay. Read rates are nothing but the read rate is uploads and the write, like response and query back, like how response you're trying to get that when you're trying to have that query fetched. So that's what it means. It's about the RDMS. Non-relational database, as I told you, it's the unstructured data will be stored inside the non-relational database. Okay, it is nothing but a NoSQL. We can also call as a NoSQL. This is nothing but a SQL database, right? It is nothing but an SQL database. This is nothing but a NoSQL. Okay, what are the benefits? It is flexible, it can be scalable, it is having a high performance. Because how high performance? All the unstructured data can be stored inside these kind of a non-relational database types. Okay, so example models. So when I'm trying to have a key values, for example, I'm having a string value here. I can try to upload the numeric value here. If I try to upload numerical value, I can try to have a string value separate to the database level. It doesn't have any schema restrictions like RDBMS. It can be unstructured data can be stored inside this non-RDMS. Okay. So non-relational database is ideal when database must scale horizontally to handle massive data volume. So if there is a huge level volume, which doesn't require any kind of a structuring to be happened or indexing to be happened, and it has to be stored in the database randomly, then this kind of a database is very much useful. Data does not lend itself well to the traditional schemas. So it is kind of there are no restrictions for the schemas. So as I told you the example, at the particular row or the column, integer and string values can be inserted at the same time. It doesn't give you errors. Okay. Read and write rates exceeded what can be economically supported through traditional RDBMS. Okay. So it does have a frequent read and write access. It doesn't give you that much load when you're trying to use that particular applications. This is how it is actually about the non-relational database. So within the Amazon database, there are different options where cloud is trying to provide. So that is nothing but relational database in the non-relational database. In the relational database, we have Amazon RDS, Amazon Redshift, Amazon Aurora. Amazon Aurora is nothing but a Amazon proprietary tool. Okay, Amazon RDS, it does have different tools like external tools also be available within this kind of a third-party tools like SQL, PostgreSQL, Oracle SQL database and everything. So that will be coming under RDS as well. And a non-relational database, we can see Amazon DynamoDB, Amazon Elastic Cache, Amazon NetView. During the core structure, we'll try to, within the ExcelR, we'll try to have sessions for Amazon RDS, Amazon Aurora, and we also try to do an Amazon DB and Elastic Cache. We'll try to do a lab session for this thing when we have a full-fledged course. So right now, after this theoretical understanding, we'll try to do a sample lab for Amazon DynamoDB. I'll try to show you how it works. Okay. So if you try to go within this Amazon RDS is a fully managed relational database service. So Amazon RDS is a collection of managed services that makes it simple to set up, operate, and scale databases in the cloud. It is very simple to set up because it is trying to provide as a software as a service where we can try to integrate our applications to this particular database so that we can try to store our data. Okay, that's about RDS. And advantages of managed database services. Okay, so what are the advantages? You can see this picture, you can try to understand. So when you're trying to deploy database at the on-premise environment, like a physical infrastructure, you can see this is a kind of an on-premise infrastructure. What happens here? You will need to manage the applications. You will need to manage the scalability of server level infrastructure, like increasing of servers when it's needed. And you need to make sure it is highly available. Like it shouldn't have any issues with the data center, power cuts, and issues with the location specific, correct? So that kind of a things. And human power is also needed with the high availability. And database backups, that's also you need maintain. Software patchings, like even you need server level patchings, right? For every servers instances, you need a patches, like a security updates that has to be updated. So that has to be taken care. Even that has to be managed. We need to manage that. And software installations we need to manage. Operate OS level patches also we need to manage. Operational OS level installations. DB is nothing but a software level patches. Okay. OS is nothing but an operational operating system level patches and the installation. These has to be managed by us. Maintenance has to be done with the human power. Racks and the stacks. Racks is nothing but a store, kind of a box level systems where the servers are kept into. So you need to make sure it is under having proper electricity available with the air conditional cooling systems as well to make sure that servers should be working in a proper cooling environment. And the powers, cables, and all the physical infrastructure level. All these things you need to manage if it is on-premise. And if you try to host the database same in EC2, what actually you need to do? Here, AWS will be trying to manage the operating system installation, server maintenance, and everything in the backend. Like what are these? These are nothing but instances we are trying to launch, right? EC2 is nothing but where we are managing the instances. If you want to integrate with the database server, the database you are trying to deploy from your end, again, the half of the aspects you still need to manage, correct? This is again a problem. For example, if I want to purchase SQL software from the outside, then I need to purchase that. I need to install in the server. Then still I need to should take care of database software level, database backups and the availability, how much storage I need to take, everything I need to manage, correct? So these are kind of things which I manage here. These are the database level, and what actually AWS is trying to take care, the backend infrastructure AWS is trying to take care, right? When you're trying to host a database within the EC2. But when it comes to the hosted database in Amazon AWS, so hosted AWS means hosted services are nothing but these things. Amazon RDS, Amazon Artshift, all these softwares are actually hosted databases available within the Amazon. This is kind of a good example. What actually you need to maintain here, the front-end software you will be only trying to see and manage, and the back-end scaling, database backups, in the softwares, installations, and the maintenance, and the disaster recovery, and the availability, everything will be managed by the AWS here. So that's how it is going to benefit when you're trying to have a proper database infrastructure deployed within the AWS. Okay. So it is going to be helpful in this way. So these are kind of a comparison how it is actually available when you're trying to have an on-premise infrastructure and manage database levels. Okay. So there are characteristics for RDS, relational database systems. So access pattern, transactional light analytics. So it will be actually useful when you're trying to utilize it with analytical tools and the graphs and statistical websites and everything that can be integrated with. It will try to show you the graph of how the data has actually been stored into this particular database level. So data size can be varied. Okay, it is actually varied from the low level to high level database that can be coming under scalability option. Performance, mid to high throughput, low latency. Under the low latency with a low high network performance, you'll be having a good performance trying to have a reads and writes within the database connectivity. Okay, business use cases like a small level industry to high level industries and the transactionals and on-demand websites, all these things like a high level business companies trying to use it, these kind of database technologies. Okay. So uses and database types works well for applications that have more complex data. When there is a data is actually very more complex to understand, where it is a raw format, where it is unstructured data. So during that situation, this RDS will be very much useful because it will try to have that data be converted into the table format and indexing, and we can try to fetch an input from the SQL tools. That complex data can be input over there. Need to combine and join data sets. It's nothing but in SQL terms, we have inner joins, external joins, and kind of a relation between one joint, one table to another table. So that kind of things we can try to manage that, and we can try to pull the data. Need enforce the syntax rules. We need to have a proper schema restriction rules that has to be followed when you are trying to pull the data from database. Okay. So 6 databases types that supported within the RDS, that is Microsoft SQL, Oracle. It is Oracle proprietary, MySQL, PostgreSQL, Aurora. This is Amazon proprietary, MariaDB. These are different types of data which are available for the RDS level. Okay, we'll try to see in the console level as well. And these are kind of an instance sizing and different types of what I can say, like we have tried to see that EC2 instance types in the same way. Even this database servers has these kind of a server. I mean, it is kind of a T family. You remember like T2.micro, M3.large, and R3.large, like burstable instances. And these are actually having a moderate performances where you will have a generic workload where you can try to use T family. In the M family means it is general purpose instances where you have a good number of high RAM performance, like you have a good RAM of 8 GB of RAM. Okay, 96 core CPU and 384 GB. It can be expandable to maximum of this particular range. So this kind of a T family instances will be useful for a smaller or variable level of solutions. Okay. So this M family can be used for general purpose instances with a high RAM performance, like it needs a more CPU level applications. And memory base optimized. It will having a high RAM performance, which will be having a good number of memory, like 16 GB of memory. Query intensive, high connection counts, where you having a frequent data loads, where it offers up to maximum of 96 cores of CPU and 768 of GB. So it can be pulled into maximum of 768 of GB. So under these specifications, we can try to deploy database server. Similar like to EC2 servers, how we deploy in the same way the backend, these servers can be deployed in this way, the database server especially. Okay. So you can see an example for this thing. Users are trying to upload the data, and the data actually has been transformed with some kind of an RDMS tools. Data has been transformed, and this being converted to a data stores, for example, for analytical tool to access. When you're trying to access this particular data in a graphical way or analytical data, that will be converted with a new data, and that will be available with the analytical tools here, like a big business intelligence tools and Cognos applications and Oracle tools. These are the tools where you can try to access the data in an analytical way. Okay, so it is kind of an information that is trying to provide how data can be fetched. This is kind of how this database can be available with the multiple availability zones, availability zone 1 and availability zone 2. So these actually database actually deployed under auto scaling, where it can be load can be actually balanced and trying to share from the primary endpoint and the second endpoint. It is kind of a backup rules. So Amazon is trying to take care in the background when you're trying to opt for the auto scaling group options. Okay, this is going to be a benefit actually. So thus it will be trying to ensure us enhanced durability, increased availability, so that there shouldn't be any data loss, and failover to standby occurs automatically. So whenever there is an issue with the data center 1, immediately the data will be completely backed up to the data, availability zone 2. That's how Amazon is trying to take care precautions when they are trying to store the data inside. This is kind of an availability options for you. Okay. And these are kind of an again enhanced benefits and read replicas. Okay. Actually, what happens, the database calculation will be read out like a reads and writes, like how much data you are trying to insert and how much data you are trying to retrieve. Okay. So this is kind of an application where you can see this Amazon RDS is trying to be deployed. The server is deployed in the private subnet, and in the public subnet, we are trying to deploy an Apache applications. So whenever user is trying to access this data from public subnet, because this public server is accessible to the user, right? So the data actually been reads and writes are happening through Amazon RDS. You can see. So whenever the data is trying to input over here, so the data actually trying to store a backup inside the RDS read replicas. You see this, right? So that whenever the next time user is trying to access the data, the cache information is trying to store over here and try to retrieve the information from here as well. We have an elastic cache technology over here. So this is kind of a different options which are available within the cloud. So we have tried to learn till now about the RDS, relational database system. So we'll try to see what is about Amazon DynamoDB. This is non-relational database management system, a fully managed non-relational key value and document database services. Okay, that is nothing but an Amazon DynamoDB. What was this? Performance at any scale, extremely horizontal scaling capacity. So we shouldn't be worried about schema restrictions and the data uploads and the type of data, whatever the data which is actually having a high level data which has to be stored immediately without any issues, like without any structuring format. So at that situations, this Amazon DynamoDB, like a non-relational database, comes into picture. Okay, and it is serverless. Serverless means it doesn't require to have any. We shouldn't be worried about software levels, like no restrictions for schemas, and you can see very fast while retrieving. What is a server level? Amazon Dynamo is a server level, NoSQL, fast and cost effective and the flexible data. Why it is fast? Because it provides very fast throughput with low latency. Okay, how it is fast? The throughput means the amount of data moved successfully from one place to another in the given time period, and typically measured in bits per second, BPS, and in Mbps and in Gbps. So this kind of a speed will be depending on the throughput. That's what the throughput. Okay, and throughput and latency are networking terms where how fast you are trying to grab the information. Okay, why it is flexible? Because there are no schema restrictions, so that you can maintain different types of a data in the same column. The attributes count could be different in each row. As I told you, the integer data and the string data and the numerical data, everything can be included in the same rows and the same columns. But when it is coming to the relational database system, it does have a restrictions. If you are trying to have an upload integer data in a one row, you need to definitely have integer data actually being uploaded in the same row. If you try to update the string data, or other string data or any other information is trying to fetch that other characters to be included in the same row, it will try to give you an error because you already defined that row is acceptable for a numerical data. Then you need to upload only numerical data. You cannot try to input any text values there. It will try to give an error. That is nothing but a schema restriction. Okay. You can see here, this is an example for here. In the relational database, there is actual information in the employee ID that is 1, 2, 3, 4. This is kind of a numerical values. When I'm trying to input E5, E5 means 5 is a numerical value, but E is a string value. It is kind of a characters values, correct? So when I'm trying to update the character values in this particular row, it is not actually accepted. That is happening with the relational database. But when you're coming to a NoSQL here, you can see I'm trying to upload employee ID equal to E5, employee name equal to Sarika, and the department ID equal to D2. So it is also accepting the string values in the numerical values without there are no issues. That is the difference between relational and the NoSQL. Okay. So that's why we are calling as there are no schema restrictions in the NoSQL, but there are schema restrictions in the relational database. Okay. So that's why we are calling as a NoSQL database. So as in the security terms, the NoSQL is it's a highly secured NoSQL database. That is nothing but an Amazon DynamoDB. Okay. So it is enterprise ready. So why it is called as serverless? Because this Amazon DynamoDB, it doesn't require any software and application that has to be deployed in a server because this Amazon DynamoDB is available as a software as a service to the users. So when I'm trying to go to the console, it is available as a software. It is a front-end application. It is available as a software. It doesn't require the maintenance. It doesn't require to have and choose an instance type. It doesn't require any patching. It doesn't require any backup level. Everything will be taken care by Amazon itself. So it is trying to provide as a software as a service to us so that we can try to use this particular endpoint as a database module. And it does have an encryption access and the control backups and everything in place. That's what it is trying to make sure. Okay. So when we come to a DynamoDB characteristics, it works well for the application that have a having high simple volume data like in a TB range. It is kind of a high level load. So non-structured data can be uploaded to the DynamoDB. Must scale quickly. Okay. So where you have tried to expand the database storage, this will be kind of a feasible options. It doesn't need complex joins on the queries and the schemas. It's very simple to use as well. It requires ultra high throughput and low latency. High throughput means like frequent reads and writes. Like the data which is trying to have a frequent queries, like reads and writes, like how much information you're trying to put into the database and how much information you're trying to retrieve, like reads and writes. Okay. What are the key features that are available within the DynamoDB? There are no SQL tables. The tables which I've tried to see, right? SQL tables, rows, columns, and indexings. So that kind of a tables are not actually required within this DynamoDB. And items can having a different attributes. As I told you, the integer values, string values, and everything can be validated. In-memory caching. It does have a caching information like read replicas, like kind of a once you're trying to the very first time you're trying to store the data. And the DB is used to store the cache of the data in the background. So whenever you're trying to retrieve the information the second time, the same information, it doesn't take much time to retrieve the data because the cache will be in-memory cache will try to retrieve, give you the faster response. That is nothing but an in-memory cache. Supports for a peaks of more than 20 million requests per second. So it does have a limit, highest limitations. So 20 million requests, like hits can be possible. That can be directly into the database level. Like 20 million requests from a different servers, like people who are trying to use the application, they can try to hit a different type of queries can be performed with this database required. It can be trying to support us. Okay, these are kind of a key features. So these are kind of a DynamoDB consistency options. You can see how this database has been trying to retrieve as well. So eventually consistent. The default setting, all copies of data usually reach consistent with 1 second. So within the 1 second, whenever the data is uploaded to the application to the database, the read replicas will be generated in the background. Within the 1 second, the transaction will be possible. Strongly consistent. It can also have a multiple replicas, which is actually a possible. The default, it will be set to 1 replica. And you can try to also have a multiple replicas kind of a backup. This feature is optional, used for application that it requires all reads and writes written as a result that reflects all reads, writes before the read. So to have a frequent response, like a frequent response through a query when you're trying to use it with an application, these options should be checked. Okay. These are kind of again chargeable options, but default should be preferable when there is a low load. Okay. So let's try to go with the next one. And this is kind of a securing Amazon RDS database. What are the different types of options recommendations? Run the RDS instance in a virtual private cloud so that you will have a protection with the firewall security groups and it will be secure enough. Okay. So if you try to choose within the VPC, you can try to restrict who can try to access what kind of an access you are trying to provide. As simple as that. Okay. And use AWS identity and access management policies for authentication and access. So you can try to define with an IAM roles, users, and who can try to access your database. User level permissions, group level permissions that you can try to define who can access your database, which is possible with an IAM. IAM we can try to discuss tomorrow. What is an IAM? Okay, I'll let you know about that topic as well. Use security groups to control what IP addresses are easy to instance. You know that security groups, right? What kind of a ports we are trying to allow and how you are trying to block the access externally of the public internet. So by default, the network access is disabled, right? You know that. So you need to make sure what kind of a ports are actually required to enable with the help of security groups. Okay. And use secure socket layer for encryption and transit, SSL. For example, you are trying to load a website, HTTPS and HTTP. HTTP is unsecure and HTTP is secure. How? Because it is trying to use an SSL transport layer security terminology. Correct? So that's how it is asking us to go with a secure methodology that is nothing but a SSL certificate kind of a mechanism. Okay, it is nothing but a secure layer for encryption and transit. In transit means the data is in a movement. Okay. And use Amazon RDS encryption on DB instances and snapshots to secure data at rest. I told you about encryption, you are aware, right? Encryption at rest and the server end, encryption at the client end. And also you know about the snapshot. While we are trying to deploy instances, you know how we are trying to take the snapshot. Snapshot is useful for the backups. Correct. So that's how we can try to use that as well. So that is kind of an option available. And use the security features of your DB engine to control who can log into the database on a DB instance. So it is nothing but an authentication system. Who can try to administrator username and the password we can try to set, and the encryption we can try to set. Everything can be possible. Okay. Configure event notifications to alert you when important Amazon RDS events occur. For example, there is an issue in one availability zone where the database is trying to have an issues. What happens when you're trying to there are actually the database is down. So you doesn't know if there are issues, then if it requires high utilization is going on with the database, then you can try to configure event notifications that will try to send out an alert to your mobile phone in terms of a text message or email notification to your email, so that you can try to make sure take proper precautionary measures to have that database be scaled to avoid any issues of outage or the production down situations. Okay. And these are again rules for the DynamoDB. Okay. It is also having some kind of a setups like IAM role setup, IAM policies, and VPC endpoints. We can try to have that connected to the VPC endpoint setup, like that virtual private cloud networking concept. And we can try to ensure client-side encryption so that data will be completely encrypted. As I told you, the encryption is at rest. Rest means the data which will be in a stored format. All of the user data stored in tables, index data, streams, and the backups. In the rest method, when the data is stored by default, that will be encryption can be enabled. Encryption in transit means our database will be in the progress. All communication to and from the DynamoDB and other AWS resources using HTTPS. We have a different encryption methods can be defined. At rest means the data is already stored. It is not in the movement. In transit means the data is already in the movement. Like coming in, data uploads and data downloads are happening at that time. The encryption can also be set up. These are kind of a different recommendations that is available. Okay. And see, migrating data into AWS database. This is nothing but a used to migrate to and from most commercial and open source databases. For example, you had any on-premise database, which is already in the physical infrastructure or on-premise structure. Okay. So you can try to migrate the data from your on-premise structure where AWS is trying to provide different migration services. Without the worry that cloud is trying to take care of the migration service from your existing environment to the database within the Amazon. You can try to migrate your data completely with the help of these tools. You can see AWS DMS job, data migration service, which is actually in the Oracle database. For example, Oracle has a database and a company which is trying to store the data in the Oracle. With the help of migration service, I'm trying to completely transfer and migrate the data to the AWS storage, which can be happening quickly. Okay. And also, this is kind of a homogeneous migration, which is outside third-party migration data. Example of heterogeneous migration, that is, if the database is available in your server level, like EC2 instance, you are trying to connect with an SQL tool and trying to store the data. Even that data can be stored to the Amazon Aurora SQL database with a proprietary tool. You can try to transfer the data. These are nothing but possible with the AWS migration service. That is nothing but a DMS. Okay. So that's how it is efficient. You're trying to transfer the data. That where AWS is trying to provide feasible options here. So these are kind of a key features, data migration services, like you can try to create a target database. It just, these steps includes when you're trying to do a lab sessions, when you're trying to have a real-time projects where you can try to create a target database and the destination database, and you need to create the database schema, the backup process, and the data transfers and the switching production to the new database. It is kind of a options which you are trying to have it available, which how it simplifyly configuration continuous data replication of an on-premise database to the RDS instances within the cloud. These are kind of an features that are available when you're trying to migrate the data from anywhere to the AWS console. I mean, AWS related proprietary tools database like RDS or the non-RDS. Okay. So that's it about the different database options which are available within the cloud environment. Any doubts on understanding the theoretical background so that we can try to go with the sample lab services, how the database can be actually configured within the cloud? I can try to show you as well. Any doubt? Any doubts? Any doubts? So this is how maybe you might have gone through these kind of topics in your maybe a learning phase, like or the courses or educationals, or you, throughout your semester or the subjects, you might have this DBMS concepts are included, right? So that's what you're trying to see it, how in real time it is available. Any doubts? Let me log into console in the meantime. So let me log into console now. I'm here. So if I try to go to the services over here, you can see there's an options called database services here. where you can see there are different types of databases which are available. You can see RDS and the DynamoDB, right? NoSQL. We have discussed about RDS, relational database systems, and NoSQL, non-relational database system. So we have tried to understand the characteristics and different options which are available within the cloud. So let me try to go to the DynamoDB now. Because if I try to open the RDS, let's see what are the options. We cannot do a lab session because it's definitely going to take a more amount of time. It needs minimum of 4 hours. Okay, which will be full-fledged. You'll be able to understand. We are trying to practice when you are trying to have that complete batch session. If you are trying to import, because I'll try to help you with how to execute SQL queries. What is an SQL query? How we can try to fetch the data. Okay, when I'm trying to click an RDS database here, you can see what are the different types of database are available. Aurora, MySQL, SQL compatible, MySQL, MariaDB, PostgreSQL, Oracle database, SQL Server. These are kind of a different database which are actually available within the cloud. So rather than depending on third-party tools outside the cloud environment, we can try to see this. Amazon is trying to provide these kind of a different database softwares which can be integrated within the cloud. Okay. Okay. So this is about RDS. If I try to go back, if we can try to able to do it for the DynamoDB here. You can see this is nothing but a DynamoDB. We have seen just before the RDS, and this is about the DynamoDB here. Okay. So what happens in the DynamoDB? It is kind of a non-relational database where it doesn't require no software. It's kind of a NoSQL database. It doesn't require any maintenance of an operating system. It doesn't require any server level management. It doesn't require any software level management, because AWS is trying to provide this software in terms of kind of a service to the users. Okay. So DynamoDB is a fully managed key value and document database that delivers single-digit millisecond performance at any scale. It can try to store any kind of an unstructured data in a high scale, like a TBs of data can be stored within this DynamoDB. DynamoDB charges for readings, writings, and storing the data in your DynamoDB tables. It doesn't charge you for creation, but it will charge you for data reading, data transfers, and the storing data, along with any optional features that you choose to turn on. DynamoDB has on-demand capacity mode and provision capacity mode, and these modes have a pricing for processing reads and writes from the table. You can try to see about the pricing itself. Okay, this will give you a pricing configurations. You can see. If you going with a free tier, because we are under free tier account, right? Even if you want to practice, let's see what are the limitations it has. We should be very much careful, because I'm trying to show you in terms of a lab, right? But without experience, please don't try to do it, because if you try to leave the database as it is, it will try to charge you thousands of rupees. Let us try to be careful in what else things. Okay. What was the free tier assistance here? Let me try to switch. DynamoDB. Thomas is actually trying to give us. So the DynamoDB free tier limitations is nothing but 25 GB of data storage for tables using DynamoDB. So you can try to create up to 25 GB of data storage within this 1 year. And 2.5 million stream read requests from DynamoDB and 1 GB of data transfer out. So if you cross these limitations, then you'll be charged. So you just need to make sure, keep in mind as well. Okay. That's about the DynamoDB thing. So what are the use cases where it will be useful? You can see this. When you're trying to have an ad technologies, it acts as a key value store for storing marketing data, digital marketings, and the clicks and the, you can see that, right? When you're trying to open the websites, it does have a pop-up ads and the clicks and everything in a Facebook and other social media websites. During that situations, you'll be this kind of a thing will be very much useful because it does have a unstructured data, right? And in the gamings as well, it will be having a key role in the retail marketing, in the media and entertainment, and the software and internets, banking and finance. So where you'll have a frequent requests and the chat applications, chatbots, and the gaming application, you are trying to have a scoreboard, dashboards information which will be displayed, live data score, correct? So the session history and the player data, these kind of a random and unstructured data that will be, it's kind of a very good option that is trying to provide us for us. Okay. So let us try to create a sample data table over here. You can see I'm trying to create a sample database table over here. Okay. DynamoDB is a schemaless database that requires only a table name and a primary key when you create the table. It's as simple as that. For example, I'm trying to create a table with the help of DynamoDB. Let me try to give it as a population, right? So I've given the table. I'm trying to create a population table for some country, right? So I'm trying to define the partition key. We have a different keys like partition key and the sort key. Partition key is nothing but it's a table's primary key. It is a primary key where it will be recognized. It is a hash value that is used to retrieve items from your table and allocates data across hosts for scalability and availability. It's a partition key, it's a main key which cannot be changed, which here it is kind of a primary key you try to define. So for example, I'm trying to give it as a country. Okay. When I'm trying to give it as a country is in which format? Is it a number format or the string format? It's not in a binary format. It is not in zeros, ones, or numbers. It is a string. We need to include the characters. So for example, if you're trying to define the partition key as a country and the string, when you're trying to create and define during the creation of database, it will accept only string value with the country only. And when you're trying to create database and trying to change that to numerical, it won't accept because I'm already defining the partition key here. Okay. So sort key is nothing but a backup key. Okay. It's the second part. It is not required. It's kind of an optional. You can leave that. And I'm giving as a default settings. You can see capacity mode, yes, provision, read capacity 5. Read inputs and write inputs. It is nothing but a 5 read replicas, 5 write outputs, and auto scaling is on. It can be auto scaled between different availability zones. And encryption management, it is owned by Amazon DB itself. Table class, Amazon DB standard, and everything is good. So I'm going with the default settings here. I'm giving a tag. If required, you can try to mention name and population maybe. So it is actually creating. So this database has been created as quick as that. So let's try to see create table. Just let me go back. This is the branch. Okay, this is the thing. Database has been created. If I need to go to the explore tables, let's see if any tables are created because we haven't created. If I click on the explore table items here, it doesn't have any items, right? Here defined, correct? So I'll go back. And if I try to click on create item, it is asking us to create. Okay. Now, this is how, if I'm trying to add a data inside this database, I can try to input the values over here. Okay. So it is trying to tell me either I can try to input the values based on the GUI level, like a form level. This is kind of form level. If you want to have the data included in the JSON level, you can try to include that with the JSON values. You can see I have a country name, it is trying to enter the value here, like a string value, right? Which I've defined. In the JSON value also, you can try to do that right with the code level. You can try to do in that level as well. Okay. So you can see. So let me try to go to the form here. So for example, if I'm trying to create a table as India, right? So what I'm trying to do here, I'm trying to have an add attribute. Already there's an attribute called country. It is a partition key as a primary key value, which I've already defined. So I'm trying to have the value updated as in India and which is string value. I'm trying to create an item. Let's see if that item is visible in the back. That's fine. You can see my item has actually updated as India over here. For example, I'm trying to add another item created. For example, I'm trying to create one more attribute with the same name India. Do you think it will accept the same name? Let us try to see. It doesn't, because the conditional request failed and item with a primary key you provide already exists, because I've already defined this particular value as a partition key as a primary key, right? So it doesn't accept if you try to create the same value again. That is a thing which has been given for the primary value. Primary key is a unique and it's already defined before itself. I have already added that. So that's why it is not adding. Okay. For example, I'm trying to create a new item within this particular table. Then what I need to do, I'm trying to add an attribute. So for example, I'm trying to add as a string value, right? Let us. Yes, DynamoDB values are case sensitive and it should be encoded with format UTF-8 format actually. Okay. And table names and index names, everything must be between 3 and 255 characters. And contain, it just should contain values like numerical values and alphabet values with the case sensitive methods. And what happens? I'm trying to give it as a, for example, country as a Sri Lanka, for example. Or I can try to add a value kind of a state. As a country is already available, I'm trying to add a state here. Okay. Country is Sri Lanka. And the state should be some kind of an SL1. I'm trying to add this. I'm trying to add another value. I need to add a population. Population is also in a string method, right? So I'll try to add kind of a header as population. Around 60 millions, maybe. So let us try to see. You can see Sri Lanka. You can see now Sri Lanka, the population is 60 and SL32. Now, if you try to observe, I'll click on this, edit item. See, I mentioned this particular value, this complete row as a string, correct? And even if it is a string values, but I try to upload the values as a numerical values inside, right? I just mentioned as 60. Now, even here in this particular row, I just mentioned along with the combinations of numerical and the string values within the 32, but it is still accepting, correct? It is still accepting. Now, when I'm trying to create a new item, for example, over here, let me try to see. Let me try to maybe I'm trying to mention as different values. Let me add one. Try to add one more value string with kind of a feedback, maybe something like that. And here, I've added the different set of data countries and feedback with the different information. Earlier, you can see this population, right? There is no feedback for Sri Lanka and India, but with the Pakistan, I've added a new string values that is nothing but a feedback, but still this table is accepting. That means it doesn't have any restrictions that a table limitation that only this particular numerical values has to be accepted and the string values has to be accepted. That's kind of information I'm trying to see it as well. Okay, let me try to create a term. So if I try to create this, even you can see this is actually having option created for North America. So here, what we need to understand is I have options which has to definitely mandate that is actually be able to manage with only the primary key. So apart from that, any other additional data, it's kind of a feedback, populations, or any modification like a string or numerical, anything can be modified and added to this table without any restrictions. That's why it is NoSQL and doesn't have any restrictions. Okay. So we can try to assign different types of a set of data that can be put into this particular tables. It doesn't have any restrictions. Even I can try to add different items over there. Okay. So for example, and I'm trying to attribute kind of new one. Okay. Males and females, I just want to mention that is actually happening. So you can see there is kind of a different table has been created with a different set of data as well, where it is trying to having a different data. So you can see there is no relation between one table to another table. There is no relation between one line to another line. Correct. So it's kind of an unstructured data. In real-time environment also, where applications we are trying to use, there might be an unstructured data where we want to dump the data into the database. So during that situations, what happens? This DynamoDB and NoSQL database will be coming into picture, which is really helpful. Okay. So we are trying to able to help out where we can try to upload the unstructured data and trying to have this no relation database without any restrictions, like without any schema restrictions, we can try to upload data. So this is how it's very much quick enough. So I'm trying to show you the sample manual update of data in the front end server, I mean, console level, right? So in the backend, we can try to link this DynamoDB with an Apache application deployed to a server or any application, running application due to the software. So that's how it can be configured. I try to do an example for you guys to manual upload of this data. Okay. So this is how it can be. And these results can be downloaded into kind of a CSV files. You can see this, where you can try to see the data where it has been uploaded. So it will be easy to monitor as well. You can see this data has been monitored over here. That's how the DynamoDB is helpful. It is kind of a NoSQL database. It doesn't have any restrictions to upload the data. It's quite quick enough. And the background, the software will be completely managed by AWS, the patch management, the OS level management, and the maintenance and the backup level, everything will be managed with the Amazon Cloud. You can see it can be having a backups as well stored over here. And you can try to export the data to Amazon S3 storage. You can see this. You can try to have that. So these are kind of a different set of options which are available. Okay. In the same way, we will be able to do the lab sessions for RDS, where we can try to install SQL application in your local computer. And from your local computer, you can connect to the Amazon and then try to upload the data. So there are different ways like RDS as well. That is kind of a time consuming process, which is usually. So we can try to do it when we are trying to go with a full-fledged course as well. Okay. Any doubts on understanding the database and the lab sessions? Try to do this. It's trying to metrics values. You can see this, how much data has been uploaded, what time, and the read capacity, and everything it is trying to visible in this particular console. And as I told you, we can try to set an alarm, which can try to send out on notifications based on the usage and which has to be taken with the precautionary measures. Everything will be invisible here. Go and delete this. It is asking, do you want to have delete alarms as well, and also any backup should be taken? Okay, I'm trying to mention nothing is needed as it is a kind of a test application. Everything has been deleted. So if I go to the RTS service funds, all right, if you can see, if I try to create a database, you're not doing that now anyway. You can try to utilize the different options SQL over here. If you try to use it for a MySQL, it is trying to give an options to deploy, like a production environment, test environment. And if you try to click on free tier, we'll be trying to do a lab. What happens here? During the lab sessions, by using this MySQL, I'll try to download an external MySQL software to my local system. And then I'm trying to utilize and execute the queries in my local system so that the database is actually completely linked to the Amazon cloud environment. Okay, so that's how it is feasible. So under the free tier, you have to do it. You can see, use RDS free tier to develop new applications, test executing applications, or gain hands-on experience with Amazon RDS. Okay, so what happens once I try to create an account, I'll try to download SQL Workbench, like a software from outside, and then I'll try to execute the queries that will be stored. And also you can try to launch an EC2 instance here, and then you can try to link this MySQL application to that EC2 instance, and you can execute the queries. There are different options. This is Oracle proprietary Oracle option over here. You can see it doesn't have a free tier actually, but we need to make sure. You see this production under dev test, it doesn't have a free tier. So if you try to do any usage of this particular Oracle database, it will be chargeable. That we need to make sure and keep in mind. As I told you, we can try to set out authentication, like admin level authentication, username and the password and everything can be set up. Okay, I told you, right, what are the different classes available? Standard classes, memory optimized, burstable. Standard is nothing but which having an infrequent data pool. Memory optimized means which requires a high memory level. Burst classes like high CPU, memory optimized, right? So burstable classes, which actually includes high storage level. These are kind of a different storage, like where this database, how much database storage, what are the specifications that you need to keep up. Okay, and the storage you can try to allocate. It just shows the values of 100 GB to maximum of TV's level. You can see the maximum of 32,768 GB. And if you want to enable the auto scaling, you can try to do that. It provides dynamic scaling support for your database storage based on your application needs. Okay, auto scaling can be possible, and availability. If you want to available this particular database to a different regions or the different data centers, that also is possible. Okay, and when it comes to the connectivity, if you deploy this particular database, you want to connect to an EC2 instance, you can try to select these options. Or if you doesn't want to connect, or you want to use a local machine for an SQL to be connected, then you can select this option. If you want to connect to an EC2 machine, you can try to select that by going to EC2 service, launching a server, and then mentioning that EC2 instance ID over here. You can see this so that your database will be linked to the EC2 server, and we can try to do a project. So that is kind of an option which is available. Okay. And the another thing, as I told you during the slides, where you can try to connect your database to a virtual private cloud that has been defined inside the cloud environment. You can try to launch securely within your network which has been configured in the cloud environment. That is with the help of a VPC. If you try to select this VPC, try to create the software, database, and then try to launch under the VPC you define so that you can control the network level security groups and the settings. Everything can be done, right? And public access. You want to have it access through public IP address. Does you need an internet access and having the access over the internet so that you can connect to a local machine? You can try to click on yes. Otherwise, click on no so that you can try to choose existing VPC which has been given. You can see. You can try to see and firewalls which can be security groups you can try to define here, like which ports to be opened, or you can try to create a new VPC security group, like what ports are actually required to have a public access. Okay. You can try to set up the encryption and the database authentication over here. If you want to have a password authentication, you can try to set up here. And you can try to enable the monitoring here. And everything can be done. So that's how, by defining all these values, you can try to create a database within the RDS. So RDS involves little time and specifications which you need to understand while creation. Okay, there are different softwares which are available with this. Right? Not required to do it. Just cancel it. So when you're just trying to go with a billing dashboard over here, like whenever you're trying to have any issues with services, like if you're chargeable, you can try to monitor that under the billing dashboard. You can see I'm trying to load it. So if by mistake, if you're trying to have utilizations which are actually chargeable services, everything will be monitored here. You can see billing. So I am having a current amount of $0.18 as I've been charged with some specific services. You can see it has been charged. We go with the billing over here. We show all the bill information that how much charges which had since from December to Feb and everything. You can see this. I've been charged with $2.18 for the Elastic Cache service here. And simple storage service when I'm trying to move the data, $0.30. And January it was low bill, there is nothing. February it was not. You see? Even it will try to show you all the payments you have done and how much billing is chargeable for per monthly basis. So everything we should be able to be careful enough. If I go with March 1, January, how much amount I've been charged? It is nothing. If I go with the February, it is nothing. And in the March, I think around $0.18. For what information I've been charged here? You can see this. You see this? In West Oregon region, I have been charged with $0.15. Where I can see this. What was this one, right? So why it has been charged? Maybe while moving out data from US West Oregon data to transfer to Asia Pacific Mumbai. Maybe when I'm trying to transfer the data from as part of this thing, right? AMI migration. When we are trying to do a snapshots and software migration for Oregon to Asia Pacific Mumbai, the data has been moved like 7.402 GB data has been transferred. That's why I've been charged here. You can see this, right? So that's why this is trying to charge me, give me a bill. So I need to pay this. I need to pay this credit card amount for sure. Okay, we just need to be careful enough in that situation. Let me see if any pending activities in my accounts. What is happening here? If I go to the Mumbai region. Any activities are pending, I just want to say it. I think I've deleted everything on that day. So it just charged for that moment. Volumes, snapshots, nothing. So we are good. So this is how I can try to monitor the performance of my billing, like how much I've been charged and what are the services which I've been actually used. Okay, you can see there are nothing, zero, everything over here. I have 6 security groups. There are no charges for security groups as well, but you can try to keep it based on the limitations. But other things, whatever the service you launch, quickly try to see, type the service name with the free tier limitation, you'll get that information in over the online. Okay. So that's it for today's sessions. As we are done with the DB as well, tomorrow we'll continue with the IAM and we'll go with the introduction of Azure and Google. Okay, because we'll be done with 2 more days, I believe. Tomorrow should be the one where we'll be completely done with AWS. We have covered all the main concept of the modules of introductions, and day after tomorrow is the last session where Azure and Google introductions will be done, like a basic overview of what are those services, what are the different types of services, consoles, which services which are available within the console. And we'll try to see, because the technology backend, everything will be same in terms of Amazon, Azure, and Google. But the naming convention will matter and the type of options which are actually different. But the backend technology and everything, data center specific infrastructure, everything will be same. Okay, the names will change. But at least we need to concentrate on one service, but we are trying to full-fledgedly covering on AWS for now, because it's being the most popular model nowadays in the current market, which will be helpful for us to understand more. Because if I try to show you one service right now within this particular session, at least for these 10 days, like 20 hours program, you'll be trying to see the linkage between different services, how we are trying to efficiently useful. For example, if I'm trying to explain you about the storage service and the database service, you can see that VPC, how it is linked to a storage and the database. So we have already completed VPC, you'll be able to understand. When I'm trying to launch a server, EC2, when I'm trying to launch within that particular different availability zones, and I'm trying to store the data inside the S3. So you got an understanding now, at least you got an overview. That's why I'm trying to explain you mostly on AWS itself. Okay, because these are the dependent services, right? So tomorrow we'll try to finish off with pending identity and access management with AWS, and then we'll go with introductions of Azure and Google Cloud Platform in coming days. Okay. Any doubts apart from this? We are done with session. I hope you are able to make it and understand slowly, step-by-step approach. Any questions you can try to ask in the chat? Anything? And not only from cloud related basics as well, any generic questions as well. If you had any career related as well, I'm okay to help you out. Of course, you're not speaking out though, but it's okay. You can try to chat, right? That's fine. Any doubts?
If anybody wants to unmute, you can unmute yourself. You have access.
Yep. Certificate for the program, I think admin team will be able to help you out. And related to Amazon certificate, post completion of your course structure within the ExcelR, where you are able to have gain experience in that course, then we will be providing you assignments in the projects and the certification instructions as well. So which will be help you out to clear certification for the AWS. Okay, which will try to help you, explain you more on when you are completely coming into course structure within ExcelR. Okay, for this module level program course, the certificate that admin team will be able to help you. So there are 2 more days left. I think tomorrow is a Friday and next Monday will be the last session for this program. We are done with the EDL program complete. Any other generic questions? Doesn't see up any questions. So you are confident enough to proceed with the cloud level career. That should be good then. Any queries? Even your feedback is appreciated, and you can try to have that feedback uploaded. So yesterday lesson actually continued for today. So that is for the database module. There will be no classes after this EDL program. So you need to opt for a course structure within the ExcelR. The admin team will be able to help you like when this AWS batch will be formed so that you can try to join the session as well. Okay, this is kind of a training program for you guys for the cloud fundamentals as part of EDL. Okay. So based on your graduations and the semester, the group which you have chosen, and based on your interest, you can try to choose for different type of technological courses. Like if people who are interested in the cloud domain, they can try to offer this cloud program, AWS cloud program within ExcelR. Okay. So if you are trying to be in developer background, you can try to have a good knowledge on developing background along with this cloud knowledge that will help you being a fresher. So which will be helpful for you to try to go with a developing background in the cloud domain. AWS DevOps kind of roles, you can try to choose it as well. Who had a good knowledge on scripting and coding. Okay. That will be also added benefit. So more technologies, more learnings, like, for example, the database. People who want to learn with a database along with the cloud, they can try to learn SQL and the cloud. So people who want to go with a development background, they can try to go with the coding languages and the Amazon cloud. These Amazon is trying to provide a certifications as well, like a different level of certification, cloud practitioner level, solution architect, and the professional level. So that's a one-time certification. You need to clear around 75% so that you'll get passed, and it will give you a certification for 3 years, I believe. So that will help you for interviews as well. So that certification knowledge you can gain through when you're trying to do a thorough practice for the practical exposure on AWS console and the theoretical understanding. It's not actually Docker is kind of a DevOps tool. It's one kind of a tool. It's an added benefit. You can try to learn different tools along with AWS cloud, which will help you. It depends on company requirements. Some companies prefer Docker, some companies prefer some kind of a Kubernetes and different AWS GitHub tools. And some companies prefer pure cloud environment knowledge. It depends on the company needs and the job description. If you would like to learn, that's fine based on your interest. Any other doubts? Are we good? All right then. If there are no more doubts, we can end the session.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. No doubt.
Okay.
Yes.
So how can fresher get into cloud related work? So being a fresher, if you are good enough with your academics, like if you're coming from computer backgrounds or communication background, electronics and communication, you just need to concentrate on trying to have a more experience and knowledge training on these kind of courses. Okay. Either you want to go to the networking domain, or you want to go to the database domain, or a pure cloud domain, or a developing role. Okay, this cloud is going to benefit you because cloud is a platform where you can try to integrate different services. You can see that, right? So you need to gain expertise on that first. So at least one technology, right? Later you'll try to understand which will make you interest. You can concentrate on other tools as well.
Sir, where we can gain extra trainings, sir, on cloud?
On cloud means what kind of a trainings?
Extra trainings, sir, like the training provided by you.
No, there is kind of a demo, right? So ExcelR is also
Yes, sir.
providing other demo EDL programs as well, where you can try to email admin teams for that kind of a help. But if you want to have a full-fledged knowledge, kind of a project level help and assistance, you need to opt for a course structure, like a 50 days course program that you need to opt with an ExcelR. Okay. Then you'll have a dedicated interview assistance, resume building, and a certificate assistance, and frequently asked questions and training assistance. Everything will be assistant over the training program. This is kind
So
of
does
a
we get
fundamental level
certificate on
trainings.
the sections?
Mhm.
Does we get certificate on the sections
That you can try
which
to
we have
contact
written?
admin team. Maybe you can try to email that ExcelR admin at the rate, right? EDL admin email that have been provided. You can try to reach them. They'll be help you with that information. I'll be able to help
Okay.
you out with the technical level and the professional level, career level.
Okay.
So we have a Python
Hello,
and
sir.
Python level trainings are available within the ExcelR. You can try to seek admin. So I'll be only training for Amazon and Azure related.
Sir, I have one question.
Solution architect program level. Yeah. What is that?
Sir, if I want to go to in the DevOps AWS, so I need to learn about the development like that, because I don't have any background about development.
So which background you are coming from, like graduation?
I have done my graduation in the non-IWS, so it's a issue. So there is any requirements?
Not requirement. Basically, you have to, for example, if you're coming to move to IT, then you need to have a good computer knowledge, computer IT knowledge, like the basic level understandings of computers and the systems and the computer networks. And then try to opt the course like this one, like AWS Cloud, which I'm trying to tell you, which will have try to have a batch soon. AWS Solution Architect, where I'll let you know about the basic understandings of various technology along with the cloud environment. So later you'll be able to decide, and you can try to apply for the cloud level jobs. It's not mandatory that you need to go with the DevOps only and you need to learn coding. Okay.
So will you recommend, sir, any?
That's what I'm trying to
courses?
recommend. We are going to start a batch for our end, like AWS Solution Architect. I will to help you out with the interview level process and trying to complete module process about complete AWS Amazon Solution Architect level course. So you can try to opt for that course. That will help you as well. Okay.
Yes.
So I've been having around 12 years of experience, right? I've been part into most of the networking data migrations from on-premise to cloud environment. We used to perform the data, patch management systems and cloud solution deployments. Everything has been done in my current organizations. I've been part into from service desk monitoring tools implementations, like integrations, and everything has been done in terms of my entire career. And I've been a tech lead, which is I'm trying to work in a reputed company currently. So which includes networking, PowerShell scripting, cloud environment, software applications, migration service, VMwares, patch managements, everything will be coming under my job roles. Okay. So it's not about must, but at least you should have a knowledge on at least one of the operating system like Windows and Linux. During my course explanation, I'll let you know about, I'll make you understand about Linux with the commands. You'll get a Linux administration knowledge and also Windows administration knowledge. You'll get a good understanding during my course structure. So within my course structure, 50 days, 25 days program, 50 hours. I'll the very first 3 to 4 days, I'll help you about Linux administration, so that with the comments, how efficiently you will try to deploy application and try to administrate the cloud with the help of a Linux operating system as well. Okay. Any other doubts? Actually, my personal details can't be shared over in the public forum. So for any queries apart from that, so you can try to reach the admin team.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
No problem. Any other queries? I hope you people are able to understand. Any queries? All right, then we'll end the session for today. Thanks, everyone. We'll meet you tomorrow. Then bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.